Can we just talk?
You've tuned into Candid Conversation with John Davis Perry II.
I'm proud because as I look out upon this crowd, there are blacks, there are whites, there are people of different races gathering together. And we're gathering together to declare that we are a people that demand justice.
Greetings and welcome to another broadcast of Candid Conversation with yours truly. I'm excited as always about the opportunity to share with you out there in radio land. And I want to encourage you to pick up the phone, pick up the cell phone, send a text to somebody. Tell them don't miss this episode of Candid Conversation. We want to make sure that everyone is plugged in our time of discussion. Well, you know, I normally start the broadcast talking about the reality that we are in a global pandemic. COVID is something that we're all dealing with and trying to get through together. So we want to encourage you to mask up. Literally, I feel like there should be billboards on all across the country, reminding us of the importance of masking up. Of course, we live in a country that allows us certain freedoms. But in times like this, it's so important that we come into agreement and we do what's right to preserve lives and to make sure that we keep one another healthy. We've got to get through this together. And so I want to encourage you to mask up, do your part. Let's do our part as a community so that once all of this is said and done, we get through this together. Now, without any further ado, of course, I always come with a special guest. And our guest on today, she's very dear to me. You know, there are those people that you meet that literally have personalities that glow and that literally embrace you without words or without any kind of actions. Their spirit just reaches out and just does something special. And so without any further ado, I introduce our guest for the day, Julie Jordan. Julie, will you say hello to our guest on today?
Yeah, hello everybody out there in Radio Land, and that was quite an introduction. I don't know what to say. I'm almost speechless, which is pretty hard for me. But thank you for that warm introduction. Well,
you know, we're going to talk about you in terms of your duties and your title and all that different stuff. But it's so important to know the person beyond duty, the title. And you are a wonderful spirit. And I just wanted to let the people know that that's real important. A lot of times they don't see that on our bio or our resume. And if we say it, then, you know, it's like, oh, you're supposed to say that about yourself. Mm-hmm. But when someone else says it, it gets across at another level. I've observed, you as a ball of sunshine. Every time I see you, I mean, you literally put a smile on my face. And so I'm so glad that you could be a part of our broadcast on today. So thank you so much for coming. I know this has been a real busy season for you.
Yeah, you would think I am running for office. I'm a candidate for House District 179, which is most of Glenn County.
Right.
So you would think during a pandemic where you can't do as many or any in-person events that it would be a little bit less. But no, one thing after another, Zoom call, town hall. So, but that's good because it stays me connected with the community and
right.
with people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, before all of this, you did a pretty good job at that anyway. Well, you know, my hopes is to just have a conversation with you on today, let people get an opportunity to know Julie up close and personal. And so why don't you just take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, obviously, I'm Julie Jordan. So I was adopted. A lot of people don't know that about me, but I was adopted when I was 2 weeks old.
Right.
By my parents, Bob and Janet Jordan, and they couldn't have kids.
Okay.
And so, it's just, you know, a lot of people say, you know, family of choice and, oh, you know, you got to have a family by blood. But I really feel like your family of choice, the family that chooses you is so amazing. And I was so lucky to have them, you know, adopt me. And I grew up in California.
Okay.
So I've lived in Georgia now about 32 years and in Glenn County, you know, about 21 years. But I grew up in California about an hour from Los Angeles.
But hold on, you said 32 years?
I've been in Georgia.
Wow. I mean, you look like you're 32. So that gives you no time in California.
Yeah. I actually was raised and went to undergraduate at college at San Luis Obispo, which is right on the Central Coast, which is beautiful. So if I had to go from one coast, I had to come to the beautiful, Golden Isles, because I had to live at the beach one way or another. So, but yeah, my dad was a grocery clerk, a union worker. So we're part of a union family, and my mom cut hair, and she was a small business owner.
Okay.
And so I was a tomboy and a jock, and I played every sport under the sun. And so that's kind of a little bit about me.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, you used this term earlier to describe being adopted, and you said family of choice. I, of course, being a pastor, I counsel a lot of people, and a lot of the trauma that people deal with oftentimes is about family. And I think one of the lessons that people have to learn very, very quickly is that family is not legitimized through blood. So, some people, have your same blood, but they're greatly disconnected. And so we grow, we learn that our family really is a matter of choice. They're people that we become endeared to, that we develop passion and love for. And that passion, love, and connection is just as valid as the blood that runs through our veins. And so I'm glad that you stated that. If you were to give us 3 value traits that defines Julie, you had to sum it all up in 3 traits, and that's a hard question, I know, but what would those traits be?
I think one would be hardworking. I always haven't had the most talent or the most speed, or but I'm a hard worker.
Okay.
I don't ever ask people to do more than I would do for myself.
That's powerful.
So yeah, I work hard, and so I think that would be definitely one thing about me. Second, which is just I like to help people. When people on holidays and birthdays, people like to get gifts. I like to give. I know that's kind of crazy, but I like to find those unique gifts and really give.
I'm open to receiving.
Yeah. So I just have always liked to help people, and I persist. I just don't give up. Wow. So I'm kind of like a bulldog. If I get a hold of something, I'm going to do whatever I can to make it better without giving up. So,
wow.
Yeah.
When you named those 3 qualities, I was saying on the inside of myself, I see why I'm connected to her and I like her so much. Because this whole idea of hard work, when you begin to talk about that, I've been in ministry since the age of 19, full-time ministry. I started as a musician and did that for 4 years before accepting my call. And then when I accepted my call to preach the gospel, this pastor named John Guns from Jacksonville said, I don't know why, but God's telling me to bring you on staff. And they were a church of about 1,400 members at that time. And he brought me on staff, and he brought other young guys on staff as well, with the intent of developing young ministers. And we were all hanging out together, and he was going down the list telling every minister what he saw in them. And one guy, he said, you're the most intelligent of all of the ministers. There were 4 of us. He said to another one, you're the most loyal. And he told another one, you're the most talented. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, all the good stuff has been taken. What do I get? And he says, Perry, you're the most passionate. And in the moment when he said it, I was about 24 years old. I was offended. I was like, what you mean the most passionate? This guy gets the smartest. This guy gets, he gets the most talented. This guy gets the most loyal. And I get stuck with the most passionate. And there came a moment where we got by ourselves, and he said, John, you see me traveling the country and you see all of the different stuff I get to do. He said, I didn't get there because I was the most smartest. He says, I wasn't the smartest guy in my class. I was the most passionate. He said, I had a work ethic that allowed me to climb obstacles to get to the place that I am right now. So when you spoke of this thing about work ethic, I immediately erupted on the inside and got so excited, because a lot of people don't understand the value in the importance of work ethic. I think we live in a community where we see it, especially in a younger generation of people, where I'm not so sure that they understand the value of taking responsibility, and allowing that responsibility to just producing them a work ethic that gets them to where they envision getting at. And so I'm really glad that you talked about the work ethic part. And then you said helping people. I came up with a family mission when I began to have kids, and it was simple. I wanted all my kids to memorize it. And it was, we are in the business of helping people. So whenever they got in trouble in school and it was a relational kind of trouble, conflict, I say, what is our family mission? And they would always repeat it. We're in the business of helping people. Did you help that person in that moment? And so that's a value that really means a lot to me as well. And this whole thing of persistence, just being consistent. You are a giant of a woman. And I'm excited about the fact that we have you here in this community. With that said, what motivated you to be in public service? I know that you have this desire to help people, but are there any other things that inspired you to just commit yourself to this whole idea of being a public servant?
Well, I guess too that the servant attitude kind of led me into education.
Okay.
So I was originally going to be I had a journalism public relations major.
Wow, I need you.
Yeah, actually did a little broadcasting. I don't have as good of a broadcasting voice as you do, though. Yours is smooth.
I've been working on it for a while. When I was in seminary, we used to have people who would try to preach with a different voice. I mean, they would talk, but when they get up there to preach, all of a sudden and the Lord said. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that my pastor was very, very good about is saying that you really have to be your authentic self. You don't morph into a different personality. You present truth out of being authentically who you are. And so I've been working on it. I'm still working on it. Scott Rifen, I'm listening to him a whole lot, taking notes, because he's our local celebrity when it comes to this talk show thing. I'm trying to get better at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you sound really well.
Thank you.
You're really good. So I wanted to help people. So I was going to be a college coach, and I was actually assistant coach at Georgia Southern for a year or so.
Now, what did you, don't lose train of thought, but what did you coach?
Basketball. So actually, I played college ball, basketball. And
you were a point guard?
I was a point guard.
Look at that.
So, I like to give the ball to other people, but I would pull up and take the jumper every once in a while.
All right.
So I was going to be a college coach, and when I got into that, I'm like, I really want to help younger people. So then I became a teacher and a coach, and, coach basketball and soccer and softball. So at a middle school in Hinesville.
Alrighty.
Then I finally got to Glenn County, and I was at Needwood Middle School and then Glenn Middle and Glenn Academy.
Okay.
So as I became a teacher, I noticed that a lot of students needed more than what teachers could give. And so I really kind of was led to becoming a school counselor.
Wow.
And that's all about advocating and helping people. Yeah. So it was a good fit for me. And so as I got closer to retiring, in 2016, they were looking for people to run for office because we have not had Democrats run for office before 2018 in decades, like maybe just one.
Okay.
So I stepped in and people wanted me to run. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to run. I'm going to throw it in there and just be my authentic self because I want to help people. And kind of like you were saying, I want everybody's voice to be heard.
Right.
We don't all have a seat at the table.
That's true.
And it's so important to bring people to the table. So, that's why I started to run for office, and I put everything I had into it. Came up a little bit short. But the amazing thing was that the community was so appreciative of me running. I'd knock on doors and I'd, say, and they'll be like, hey, are you running? And they're like, are you a Republican? And I'm like, Democrat. And they would give me these big old bear hugs. I think just because no one in such a long time has spoken for them or fought for them.
Right.
And I think that's so important. So I kind of just fits into who I am.
Okay.
And I never thought I'd be, a candidate. But I really feel like I'm carrying people with me.
I got you.
You know, I'm sure as a preacher and minister, the same thing. You feel like when you walk into a room or to a table and make decisions for people or help people, you're carrying all those people with you.
Absolutely.
And you have a responsibility.
Absolutely.
So.
You said two things that really stick out that I want to talk about in a more expanded way before moving to our next question. You talked about being a point guard. My dad tried out for NBA and made it to the final round, and then got cut. He had the opportunity to go overseas, but didn't want to do that, of course, with the family. And so, I had some aspirations in basketball, was a point guard. And he used to always try to get me to shoot, wanted me to shoot. But naturally, I wanted to get other people in the game. There was just this belief that you can do it. Don't rely on me to score the basket, because we can set you up to score. And that was really a passion. And so now I can say that, like Julie Jordan, I was a point guard. John Maxwell, I don't know if you know who John Maxwell is, but he's very big on leadership. And John Maxwell played basketball too, and he was a point guard, and was driven by this whole idea of getting people in the game. And so I think that is a unique part of great leadership, the desire to see other people in the game. You mentioned bringing other people to the table, and that's the point guard in you. Hey, I don't want to go alone. We can win together as a team. And so our nature is to set people up, to bring their unique value to the table. But also you talked about this idea of, that when you ran, people were excited that you were running as a Democrat. When we talk about this whole idea of, Democrats versus, Republican, in your mindset, what do you believe are the things that define Democrats? What are the hallmark of people who speak and advocate from a Democratic perspective?
Yeah, I think it's about caring about people, of bringing everyone to the table. I don't think it's inclusive.
Okay.
I think it is inclusive. I think it's a big tent. When I see people, I might not agree with everything, but I'm going to listen to them and I'm going to work with them. And I think it's about equality. As we know in this day and time, a lot of hatred, a lot of anger is kind of bubbling up. And I think it's been there for a while, but it's bubbling up. And we have got to all come together and unite. We can't be people that attack people of who they are.
Right.
And I think, I'm gay. I'm a gay candidate. I grew up. I didn't know I always knew I was different, but I think one of the things that led me to the Democratic Party is that I didn't fit in the Republican Party. Right. They didn't think I deserved equality, that I was equal to everybody else, that I deserved the same protections. Right. And I think I see the same thing with race. I see the same thing with gender. The Democratic Party includes all of us together the way we are authentically and doesn't ask us to change. So
now here is, I try to make sure that, I'm a little edgy. Of course, I'm a pastor, and this is a Christian radio station. When you said that, that you're a gay candidate, in your opinion, what has been the response of the church to your way of life? What have you encountered? And when I say the church, let's talk specifically the Christian church. What have been some of the things that you've encountered?
Well, when I was growing up, I've always been, very much a believer.
Right.
My grandma, I was raised in the Lutheran church, and my grandma Ruth was on the altar guild, and I always was fascinated with the ritual and just the warmth of living the life of a believer. And so it's never been about not being believing, and I'm a born again Christian.
Right.
But when I was growing up in some churches, I didn't feel like I felt like people were looking at me like I was, less than.
Right.
I was an abomination. And so I definitely prayed about it. I didn't, really didn't do anything with it. It just, I knew I was different.
Right.
But I just kept praying that, Lord, if I'm supposed to be this way, or please help me overcome this. And, and so as I grew older, I finally realized that when I accepted myself, I was more at peace with my relationship with God.
All right.
So it's not really about the church accepting me, because I don't think that God and my relationship with God is about a organization. It's about me and my relationship with God.
Right.
But I think as people know me and they know my authentic self, I don't feel judged from people. And maybe they judge me behind my back. But
I know that feeling.
Yeah, exactly. But I think my relationship with God is nobody's business but my own. But I just want to say there's so many people. I know you said, my or people say choice of lifestyle. I really don't feel like it was a choice. I think God made me. I was born this way. And so it wasn't until I accepted myself that I feel like I really had a better relationship with God. So,
well, in the Christian church, that's still one of those real hot topics. And so I didn't want to skip past it. I know as a pastor, I've tried to put the emphasis on what you just said, a personal relationship with God, because any change that God wants to happen in our life, despite whatever that change is, it comes first out of having a authentic relationship with him. And I think a part of what the church has done is try to impose its personal interpretations of scriptures on people as the qualification for having a proper connection with God, when the reality is it starts with having a relationship with him. He brings you into his truth, whatever that truth is, and then we make the personal adjustments that we make to try to honor God in our relationship with. I know for a lot of my life, I was raised in the hood. My mom, in my elementary years, we were raised in a very low income that fits the definition of the hood. Now, she was going to school, and she eventually got herself to a point where she was able to provide for us at another level, and we moved to a middle class area. And that happened around going into ninth grade. But because I was raised in the hood, I was indoctrinated with this concept that the means justifies the end justifies the means. And of course, that's a survival mentality. But as I grew in my relationship with Christ, one of the things that I began to understand is, man, this concept doesn't honor the mind and the heart of God. You really got to fight to put that part of you to rest if you're going to try to honor God. And so that's just an example of one of those things that in your relationship with God, he shines the light on different things, and he directs you regarding the things that he wants you to change and shift. That doesn't necessarily come from a group of people who are claiming to have this superior elite relationship with God. And so just thank you for sharing that with us. I believe that there are listeners out there that, may be struggling with their personal relationship with God because of what people say and because of the rules that people try to implement. And I think you're sharing what you just shared will help them in a great way to embrace an authentic relationship with God despite the words of people. In serving the Glenn County community, and of course you're serving beyond Glenn County, but as a public servant within Glenn County, has it been a difficult process of serving this community?
I think in some ways, but in other ways, no. There's so much here. There's so much need. So it's never hard to find something to do or to help. I bet you probably get asked to volunteer at 5 different things any given day.
That's a lot of need.
a lot of need. And so I never find myself, of lacking things to do and how to help out, in the sense of serving as trying to run as a candidate and as a leader, getting to the table. As you know, I mean, it's kind of the good old boy network around here.
Right.
And a lot of times people don't want to let someone else at the table. So it's been a fight to try to get to the table. And I think it's a continual fight. And I think once you get there, it's really, I had talked to you about this before, is when you get to the table and you look around and there's a group of people or a person missing, I think it's our responsibility to bring them to the table with us.
Right.
And Rabbi Rachel Bregman had told me one time, she's like, Julie, if you're not at the table, make your own table.
Mm.
And I think in this community, we've seen, especially with the Ahmaud Arbery situation and new organizations like A Better Glen,
Right.
people stepping up, trying to lead, and we're basically making our own table.
Right.
And bringing new leadership and new voices to the table. So even though I think at times people will say, Julie, I support you, but I can't do it publicly because I'm afraid I might lose my job. I'm afraid my business will get hit. I won't make as much money. I think even though that still exists in Glenn County, I think that slowly, because what everyone's doing, it's making a difference. Back in 2018, people wouldn't even say they were a Democrat.
Mm.
And now we have people that, I almost won. I was only lost by 3,000 votes.
Right.
That's
little.
Little. Yeah. And now people are like, you know what? I don't have to be afraid to be my authentic self.
Right.
And I think that's because of people stepping up to run, not only me, but other candidates and other leaders that are just stepping up and making a huge difference in this community. And I really am excited about us uniting together so that we can make change.
Well, so. I know for me, I definitely agree with the statement that you made that there's a lot of need. So for those that are willing to lead, the opportunity to be the solution to problems is absolutely there. I've found it difficult personally, leading in this area from the standpoint that there's a lot of apathy. There's a lot of people who are willing to say that this needs to change, but I don't see a great group of people stepping up to actively fight to be a part of the changes that they identify. It's kind of that Monday night couch quarterbacking mentality. Mm-hmm. And so I think that part has been difficult, but in the recent events that we had with Ahmaud, different people have been stepping up, and it's been refreshing. The I Run with Ahmaud team did a wonderful job and are yet providing wonderful leadership in our area. Out of that, I believe, was birthed the Better Glen organization they're organizing themselves, and they're doing a wonderful job. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. And so we do have some emerging personalities and persons rising up in leadership in this area. But I think we still can use a whole nother level of community participation. And I think it's going to be necessary for the change that we really dream about. And so I definitely honor your willingness to step up to leadership, because I understand some of the barriers that you deal with as a leader in this area. What would you say are the top 3 issues facing America? And I know we got a lot of them. But if you had to give us the top 3 issues that you believe we are facing as a country right now, what would they be?
Well, I think the pandemic. I think it's just really at the forefront. And as you already talked about, leadership. It shows leadership or lack of leadership from the top all the way down. And I think until we fix the pandemic, until we deal with how to slow it down or get a vaccine, it's really all encompassing, because it not only affects people's health.
Right.
We realize that healthcare is a problem in the state of Georgia, and in this county we have over 4,600 people, families.
Right.
And I'm sure it's more than that now that don't have healthcare. And so then you see, and Randolph County, another regional hospital is closing down in the state of Georgia. I believe that's 8 in the last 9 years. Yeah. And we see that happening. And we see unemployment rate just skyrockets. There are jobs out there, but they're minimum wage job or just over minimum wage. and they're having to put their health. We know a lot of people working in servers at restaurants and waitresses and on the front lines, doing all that work for low paying jobs.
Right.
And then they have no health care and they have no paid sick leave. So, and when you're working a couple jobs and you can't afford rent around here. Rent around here is affordable rent is non-existent.
Right.
And then you talk about childcare.
Mm.
So all of these things, the pandemic is just exacerbating.
Right.
And so until we fix the pandemic and deal with that and stop pretending that it's just going to go away.
Right.
We've got to take steps to get it under control, and then we can work on our unemployment rate, on our health care, on education. All of those things are connected. Right. So, but right now I think we need to unite together and realize that this is a really big problem and that we've got to do it together. We can't be divided.
Right.
And get through this.
Well, when people ask me about my perspective, my mindset and what do I identify as, I tell them all the ways that I'm probably what you would call a Demopublican. Mm-hmm. I consider myself a very conservative Democrat. And my approach to it is that we have a right and a left hemisphere, in our brain, and we need both parts to exist. And so when you talked about, finding ways to come together, that's pretty much how I've lived my life. Of course, there are things that I probably have a bias towards, that I'm a little bit more exaggerated on. But generally speaking, I'm always like in that middle of the road, trying to find truth on both sides. And how do we pull these elements together? I think it's the point guard in me that believes in being an agent of transformation and fighting for the underrepresented. And so that's a dominant part of me. And so my dominant identity would be Democrat. But I do have some conservative views, and I'm always trying to find that how do we balance those two? Because we got to care for people, but we also have to do it in a way that gives us fiscal responsibility. And so I understand those two dynamics, and both are true. But we can't have fiscal responsibility at the expense of lives. That's ridiculous. Because this whole system we've determined it, we created it, we made it up. And so protecting people and lives has to be at the forefront of of our mission and our mandate as a country, in my personal belief. So I love the idea that you said that we got to find a way to come together. And so that's a very, very important aspect of, I believe, being American. So the first thing was that we got to get past this virus, as a country. I think I can say it. And, not get in trouble, but, I'm used to saying stuff and getting in trouble. So, before the pandemic ever hit, they were already talking about global overpopulation. And then all of a sudden we get hit with a virus that's killing people. And so, there's a part of me wondering, because I never underestimate the evil of the human heart. There's some people that really don't care about human life. Their value system doesn't have, humanity, at the top level. They only see people as a way of making money, and accomplishing goals. And so, part of me wonders, and that I'm just throwing this out there. I know, I have no evidence, but, they've been talking about overpopulation and that we're not going to be able to feed people if the world keeps getting more populated. And so there's a part of me wondering, was this staged? Was this intentional as a way of starting the process of bringing population down? But whatever the case, whether it was coincidence or intentional, we definitely got to get a grip of it so that we can do the business of making sure that we help people have healthy and productive lives. So getting over the pandemic was your first area of focus. The second was leadership.
Leadership, I think it ties into that.
Okay.
Of providing leadership that doesn't just care about the wealthiest of all, of people, our top 1%.
Right.
We need leadership that cares about the most vulnerable.
Right.
Because if we lift everybody up, if we lift our most vulnerable up, we lift everyone.
Right.
And it's such here we live in the Golden Isles. I mean, we have a lot of the riches of the Southeast. And then yet we drive 5 miles across a causeway to Brunswick, which is a beautiful city. But we have such high poverty. We have 76% poverty rate in some areas. Right. How do we justify that? That doesn't fit for me. You have to, I'm retired. I do pretty well, but
let me hold something.
How can I, be okay with people that I've seen, in the school systems right. that don't have enough to eat at night, that don't have a roof over their heads.
Right.
I can't rationalize or justify that. And so leadership has to address not rich people. It has to address all of us.
Right.
And I think right now you talked about, kind of a conspiracy theory, but if you think about it, our systemic racism and the way that our governments and systems have negatively affected Black and brown people from the beginning adds to why COVID is affecting, our Black and brown brothers and sisters more than anybody else because of the lack of health care, right. the lack of wealth, the wealth gap,
right.
All of those things.
Well, you hit the nail on the head for me. I think there are a lot of things as a country that we really, really have to address. And I think we've hit a place where through generational preparation, of course, at the point that our kids begin to go to school together, it created an opportunity to really cross some racial barriers. And for generations that has been taking place. And so when these protests began to happen across the country, it wasn't just Black people. It was people of all colors. And so I think that we're in this prime place where there's a generation that doesn't have some of the baggage of previous generations. All they know is, hey, this is my friend. This is my brother. This is my sister. And this isn't right. And we've got to do something about it. And so I think we're in a place where we can see from this current generation some emerging leaders that really takes us into some places that we have been fighting to get to. And the whole idea of racism in America, I guess, and that's one of the questions I was going to ask you, but you really answered it right there. So we do have, in your opinion, an issue of racism to address in America?
Yeah, it's just the systemic racism. Right. As a white woman, I've been lucky enough to never have experienced racism, but I've seen it and right. I've heard it happen to people I love and care about. And even in the school system here, when I put people, I did the master schedule, I put people in classes and stuff, I'd have parents call up, white parents call up and say, hey, I don't want my kid in one of those classes with those people. And I'd be like, right. Well, what do you mean those people? What are you talking about? So that people, it's just hurtful that people still feel like they can voice that. Right. So even though I feel like, and I'm sure progress has been made, but not enough. And I believe, you have to call it what it is. There is racism.
Right.
And how do we move past that without acknowledging it? And as you see in this community, we have tons of people that have come together, but there's people out there still.
Right.
That will not give up that power, that don't want to see things change.
Right.
And it is up to us, our generation, the generation before us, and the upcoming generations to all band together and say, hey, enough is enough. And we're going to make it change this time. And we can't give up. So.
Hey, that's some good stuff. You're sounding like Oprah over there.
Hey, that's a great compliment right there.
Well, we know that we have some challenges to deal with in our country. as it relates to this whole idea of racism. I was talking with a pastor, and one of the things that he said to me, he said, John, it's not always that we don't want to help. White pastor, not that we don't want to help, we just don't know how to help. And I said, well, as a Christian, we have taught this idea of the golden rule for forever. Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. And I said, so if your sons and daughters were being brutally killed by law enforcement and were being treated, unfairly, what would you want me to do? As someone who claims to be a brother, as someone who claims, to genuinely love you, what would you want me to do? And I think that question is really at the heart of the matter. I was talking with Rabbi, you brought her up earlier, and I told her, one of our problem is that there's this underlying evil in the hearts of people. There's a comfortableness or a willingness to put on blinders to the pain of others and not act. And in my definition, that is a manifestation of evil, that I can see someone being brutally treated in a way that's unjust and not be willing to give voice or to give a hand to help that particular person. And so I think when we talk about racism, there's an underlying evil that we have to deal with, despite America claiming that it's largely Christian or largely it believes. There's really some evil that we have to really look in the mirror and deal with, some hidden stuff on the inside of us. Because when you try to bring up those issues, there's oftentimes a denial. Oh no, that's not me. But we clearly have some issues that we have to deal with, and it's refreshing to see that the fight is not just one race of people trying to fight that fight, but we're getting people from different races coming together saying that, listen, we have to advocate this whole idea of human rights and do what's right by all people. And I'm so glad that you're one of the people leading the charge as it relates to that. Well, we've talked about our issue of racism in America. What is the most urgent economic challenge that you believe that we're facing? In what area do you believe we're most impacted at from a financial standpoint right now?
Well, besides the pandemic, which is affecting everything, it's when I talk to people, it's healthcare. It just seems to be that overarching issue that we can't get past. Being able to have an education,
right?
The inequity of economic opportunities for everybody.
And I'm sure you would say those both are equal, health and education.
Yeah, well, you can't teach kids, you can't educate people when they're hungry.
Right.
When they don't have a roof over their head, when they're sick. And I think one of the big things in this county that I'm as an educator, is about, universal pre-K. And when I get to the Capitol, that'll be one thing I'll be fighting for. We only have 50% of our pre-K kids here that even go to school.
Wow.
And it's done by a lottery system. So if we're going to break the cycle of poverty and we're going to really give our children economic opportunities, we've got to give them those early education opportunities for everybody.
Right.
And so that's one thing that's just huge. And you can't keep asking people to work for do you know that the minimum wage in Georgia is still $5.15 on the books?
Wow. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It hasn't changed in over 10 years. And obviously we go by the federal $7.25, but just that it's on the books at $5.15.
Right.
And if we do not start paying people, if they can't have a job and have a living wage, how do we expect people to grow, to be able to afford to buy a house, to be able to send their kids to college? So we have to address all of those things. I don't know that one's more important than the other. I think it's all intertwined, but right. I know that the leadership we have now is not seeking those changes.
I have some passions as it relates to the city of Brunswick, because there's a lot of, I would dare to say that the most of our poverty is right there in that sector. And of course, education is a big problem. Healthcare. When you talked about that you can't educate a kid, who doesn't have their healthcare needs met or they're hungry. When you said that, all that reminded me of Jesus. It's just a preacher in me.
Yeah.
He never tried to teach people about God before dealing with the physical need. So you read these accounts where, he takes the time to feed people first. And then after feeding them, then he gives them these spiritual lessons. But he never tried to give the spiritual lesson prior to meeting the physical need. And there's some physical needs that we're going to have to make sure that we address if we are going to have any shot at properly educating our youth, and not just our youth, but I guess young adults as well, that desire to better themselves, so that they can be persons that contribute in a meaningful way to our society. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. And of course, if we're going to deal with this virus, we got to get healthcare right. Because I was shocked to find out, I bumped across this list of countries that were best prepared for the virus. And I was shocked to find out how far America fell down on that list as it related to having proper ventilators in hospitals and beds. We're supposed to be a world power. And, in the evaluation of our healthcare system, rated very, very poorly.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think right now, a lot of our elected officials and, I feel like Republicans basically are more short-sighted. It's about, what can I get now? How much money can I make now? What can I get in the present? Where I think as leaders, we have to see the big picture. We have to have plans way out in front. How is our infrastructure being taken care of? I mean, we know L Street, my goodness, it's still ripped up.
Right.
If we can't see the big picture and plan for things, just like we are as a family, when you have a child, you're like, okay, I need to start saving for, maybe hopefully they'll go to college or maybe they'll go to technical school. So we start saving and planning.
Right.
It just seems right now we're kind of like, instead of being proactive, we're just trying to react to all the problems that are happening. We have to have a big picture and plans,
right?
To address all those things so we can make change.
Right.
And so I think that's a big factor.
You're
a
great
saying.
salesperson. I wish you all could see what I'm seeing. I mean, as Julie's sitting there talking to me, she's locking eyes and you can see that it's authentic, that it's really your heart is what you believe. It's not just the spill of a politician, or someone that's, trying to win people over through, carefully crafted communication.
No, pretty much what you see is what you get with me. And I think, politics at the local level and even, in the state house is really about wanting to serve. And I think, if you're not willing to serve the people, then you shouldn't be in these, even asking for people's votes.
Right.
And I think about accountability. So when you elect me, you can definitely hold me accountable and I will be accessible. I think that's another thing of a great leader. You have to be accessible. You have to be amongst the people and not shy away from problems and be willing to listen.
Well,
So
I guess, for people who don't want to be accountable, they make sure that they're not accessible.
yes.
So those two go hand in hand. But when you don't mind being accountable, then you're open to being accessible, because your heart is really to serve people. You helped me come up with the leadership outline right there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Before all of this stuff happened, one of the things I used to do is do a lot of traveling, teaching, church leadership. That's like one of my greatest passions. Really, I could be on staff somewhere just training leaders versus being the senior pastor. I love finding people with potential and just trying to shape that potential so that they can be everything that they have the possibilities of being. Now, in what you do, it calls for a lot of negotiation. being able to come up with ideas. And so in my estimate, I would assume that makes you a master negotiator.
I think as a school counselor, listening, I think is a really great leadership trait, because you really have to hear what people are asking. People when they're asking, when they're trying to develop legislation and stuff, you really have to listen, because you can kind of see, the hate crimes bill, awesome, finally got it passed.
Right.
But what did it take to get it passed? But were people really trying to get it passed because it was the right thing to do? Or were people doing it just because there was a lot of protesting and it looked good?
Right.
So you really have to look and listen to people. So I think as a school counselor, that will help me. A lot of people are like, Julie, you like to get stuff done. So government is slow. But I have had the opportunity and the privilege of meeting all of these incredible women candidates over the last couple of years, right. Stacey Abrams and all of these, my sisters, I'm on a Georgia win list, so we're called the Sisterhood, but we all help each other out. And when they got elected and hit the Capitol, they didn't wait. They started attacking things right away. And I think the new people that are coming in to run for office now are doing it to serve.
Right.
And that's what's so exciting. So they're like, Julie, hurry up and get it to the Capitol so we can flip the House and actually get some stuff done. We can expand Medicaid.
Right.
Which, it'll bring over 50,000 jobs into Georgia, cover over 500,000 people, and it might save some of these rural hospitals that are closing. It'll bring, basically, we're losing $3 billion a year in our Georgia economy by not expanding Medicaid.
Wow.
So, there's just that's just one thing that we could do to make a huge difference.
Right.
And so I'm excited, to join voices with other people that are really wanting to make a change. So.
Well, you mentioned something while you were just talking, the bill that was just passed, the hate crime bill. I know that there was talk about them wanting to put law enforcement as a part of the people who were protected in that hate crime bill. And I had some different opinions about that. I'm pro law enforcement. They put their lives on the line. And there are plenty of law enforcement that serve us with great integrity. And so I think they should be protected. I just thought it was out of order. I don't think that you put them on that type of bill before you ensure that they're held accountable for protecting the people. Because right now we've been seeing all this stuff go on across the country. They're saying, okay, people that are supposed to serve and protect are vampires. And so I would personally, I communicated to some people, I would like to see something put in place in policy that says that if law enforcement use their office to harm people, that they are hit with stiff punishments. And after you put that in place, then, we could put in place now if a hate crime is, because we have to demand integrity in the office first. And when we know that we have a system of law enforcement that is operating integrity, then we want to protect those that are operating in integrity. And so I guess that's that part of me that is always trying to seek some meaningful balance. We got to make sure it's not just one-sided.
Well, and people will try to say that Democrats are not, pro-police. But you know what? Firemen, policemen, they're servants. Right. They're community servants.
Right.
Just like all of, everyone that's trying to serve. And I really appreciate that. And they should be taken care of. But they already have a lot of protections already.
Mm-hmm.
So that bill about giving special classification to police, what they did was they said, basically, if you want the hate crimes bill to pass, we're going to put this police stuff in another bill, and you got to pass that too. Yeah. So they kind of leveraged that. And now they rushed that police bill through, and it really looks like now, if it passes, we're hoping that Governor Kemp will veto it. If it passes, there would be less penalty to someone who murdered a police officer than there is now. So
Wow.
I think in their haste, they didn't really vet the bill.
Right.
And it would also allow policemen and firemen, if you went on a property, if they came to my house and let's say they had to go up a tree and get my cat and they fell, they could sue me.
Wow.
So you really, even though it has the title of a pro-police bill, you really have to look and see what they're doing. I believe, with anything, with teachers, with politicians, with policemen, there has to be a system of accountability.
But pastors.
With pastors, there has to be accountability. And I don't think because we're asking for accountability, that means that we're not, pro law enforcement.
Right.
So.
Well, I think in anything where we're called to serve the people, there has to be accountability. Otherwise, the people are, they end up abused in the process. Tragedies happen because the evil of human nature kicks in. If it's not this person, then maybe it's the next person. And so I'm with you on this whole thing of accountability. I want to take a moment to just simply say thank you for your service to our community. You are a great person. And you have been doing so much in so many ways to just help us to be a better community. And we really value you. You mentioned that you're going to be running. And so, of course, this isn't a political show, but we do want people to have access to you and be able to look up all of your information. So would you tell us how, if we have listeners that are interested in following your campaign,
Sure.
How they can go about doing that?
Well, and I just thank you for being so nice and having me on this show because, like I said, I want to be accessible and I want people to know me.
Right.
And it's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to serve this community. But if you want to know more about me, it's julieforgeorgia.com is my website.
Okay.
Julie for Georgia on all the social media handles. And you can check me out. And we have lots of town halls, virtual town halls. And I just want to encourage all of the listeners, no matter how you vote, please vote.
That's important.
Yeah, if you're not registered, get registered.
Right.
If you're registered to vote, I know a lot of people are saying negative things about mail-in ballots, but really it's one of the safest ways we can vote in a pandemic.
Okay.
So request your mail-in ballot for
Right.
we have a runoff going on with the first congressional seat right now. And also for the Republican side, there's a runoff going on
Okay.
for the county commission. So, and you can go ahead and apply for your mail-in ballot for the general election.
Okay.
So I think a part of being a good citizen is obviously to vote and make your voice heard.
That's
So,
right. Making sure that you choose the leadership that you want to lead you in the different seasons that we find ourselves in. There was something that I wanted to say right before getting off the air. This is what I wanted to say. All of us have a moral responsibility to add value to the world that we live in. In my estimation, you are an example of that. Individuals that take seriously that my life is supposed to make the world better in some unique way. And so thank you for being an example to us. And thank you for all that you do. And hopefully this won't be the last time that you come and sit down and talk with me. I'm not that hard to talk to, am I?
No, this has been very nice, and it's been a candid conversation.
All righty. Well, I want to thank you for joining in to another broadcast of Candid Conversation and want to encourage you to join us on next week. I can't wait to talk with you. God bless.
You've tuned into Candid Conversation with John Davis Perry II.